Welcome to In the Zone. I'm Craig Zimmerman, and we are on to edition number 52. And we've got a friend sitting across from me. Welcome, Kurt VanWormer.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I told Paul Dingham we're going to do this interview. He says, "What's your title?" So we put up retired friend of Craig Zimmerman.
That's it.
That sort of fits it, right?
That's it.
So, you know, Kurt, you grew up in the area, but there's sort of like a generation that you've been gone, and we'll talk about that. And now you're sort of back because you bought a summer home here in East China.
That's correct.
And so we'll get into that a little bit. You were born in, I won't say you were born in Marine City, because we talked about that, but you were raised in Marine City.
I was raised in Marine City, that's correct. And I then went to college at Northern Michigan University and got a degree in marketing. And there weren't many jobs, of course, in Michigan at the time. And I moved to North Carolina.
Okay.
And I've lived in a lot of places. I've lived in North Carolina, I've lived in Kansas City, I've lived in Milwaukee, I worked lived in El Paso and worked in Mexico, and Texas. And I've been in Texas for 23 years now.
So let's go way back, because it's like there's a lot of things that your dad's Bob VanWormer.
Right.
So some Marine City natives may know. And Bob's what, 88?
My dad just turned 90.
Okay, 90. Okay.
On March 14th, he was 90.
90. And so when I think way back, Bob was the owner of the oil company in Marine City.
That's right.
Way back in the early 70s.
Standard Oil.
Yeah. So then he sold to Bob Thompson.
Good memory.
And Jim Schweihofer. I don't know if Jim was in it at the time, but it's today what is part of Blue Water Oil with Foster Oil. And did you ever work on the truck?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Not work, but I rode on the truck.
Right.
Yeah, and it was great because you're a little kid riding on the truck, and my dad would take fuel oil to the homes, and the ladies in the homes would see me in the truck, and they'd bring me cookies.
Cookies, right. Couldn't be any better than that.
It was great.
Yeah. So you delivered to gas stations, you delivered to homes,
right.
Different things like that.
Right, correct.
And that would have been the early 70s, I would guess.
No, that was in the 60s.
Was it?
That was in the 60s, because he went to work for Reef Baker in 72, I think it was.
Okay.
That's when he sold the business to Bob Thompson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Way back. And then your dad went on to a sales career, and 2 or 3 of his sons, you being included, sort of followed him in that.
That's right. My dad was the Vice President of Sales for Eaton Corporation for their brake division, and I worked for Eaton Corporation for 20 years. My brother worked for Eaton Corporation as a road ranger, and my other brother worked for Eaton Corporation as well as a sales engineer. So yeah, we all worked for Eaton Corporation at one time or the other.
Okay. How about all the different places you've lived? Is there one that's any better than another?
Oh, they're all nice. They're all nice. Like I said, I've been in Texas for 23 years, so I like Texas, but I also like come back to the river. When I retired, I always had a plan. I was going to buy a summer home in Michigan, and so I bought a home up Point Drive in East China, and a great place to spend the summer.
Yep. Got to find you a boat though.
I saw one yesterday.
Okay, so there's always some around. So.
Yeah.
So now you've also traveled extensively throughout the world. Give me some countries that you've been to.
Oh, I've been to 24 countries with my career. Everywhere in Europe, you know, practically every country in Europe, South America, Central America. I worked in Mexico for 5 years.
Okay.
Where I learned to hablo español. As well as Asia. Been to Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, and spent a lot of time in China on business, a lot of time.
What years roughly would the China thing have happened for you?
China was in 2003 through 2015.
Okay.
I was going back and forth to China a lot. I'd go over for 2 weeks, I'd come home for 6 weeks, go back for 2 weeks, come home for 6. I was going back and forth, setting up a supply chain for a Japanese company called Toshiba at the time.
Okay, okay. And so when did you decide to go into the career of sales?
Well, I got a degree in marketing out of Northern.
Okay.
And so I wanted to be a marketing manager, but you can't get a marketing manager's position right out of college, so you have to become a sales engineer, salesman. So I became a salesman, and I was a sales engineer for 8 years before I then got into marketing.
And you got your gift of gab from your father.
A little bit,
Right.
a little bit.
Okay. Let's talk about your siblings. You got brothers.
Yeah,
You're the oldest.
I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
That's correct. I've got a brother, Scott, who lives in Florida, sister Candy, who lives in Florida, and a brother, TJ, who lives in Kentucky.
That's today.
Right? Yeah, TJ likes to travel around. TJ's lived in as many cities probably as I have.
But he seems to have like the eternal suitcase packed.
He
Right?
certainly does. I think he's on the government witness protection plan.
I mean, there's been many times it's like, what's TJ up to? It's like, is he still living in X? And, oh no, that's 2 moves ago, right?
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
So listen, Craig, that's a lot about me. Does any of your viewers know about you?
Oh, they probably.
You know? I
Maybe
mean,
not.
our families have known each other. Your parents and my parents knew each other in high school.
Yes.
And I knew your grandfather, your grandmother. Your grandmother lived to be
98. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
thinking it was 100.
Yeah, pretty close.
But yeah, your grandmother lived to be 98. Tell us about your family. Your grandfather, started the Zimmerman's meat market business.
Yeah, he came in fact, I don't know the exact year, but I want to say early 30s from Germany. So he came here, like a lot of immigrants do, for the better life. Worked in meat packing houses in Detroit. Then, and I don't remember exactly, I should have maybe asked my brother, but what it was that brought him to Moraine City, maybe a connection of somebody saying, hey, there's a meat market there that maybe is for sale.
Right.
He started that in 1941. So, yeah, it's all that the family knew from 41 through about 9 years ago when they sold it.
Right.
But my grandfather ran it. And back in those days, it was way different in the sense, almost like your dad's in the oil business. That was different because back when I grew up in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, they were still killing cattle at the meat market. And you remember that.
Oh, I watched them kill a
Yeah.
cow one time.
That's about all. Yeah, right.
Yeah, one time.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I was at the tail end of that whole issue because they stopped probably when I was a teenager. And you watch it once and you got to have a different mindset for watching that. The
Yeah.
whole process from start to finish.
Yeah.
But I also, when you say that, I think back to the times when I bet you almost every day that they killed, there was kids at the back door watching. And they might have only watched once or twice.
Yeah.
But it was sort of like they're at the screen door and they're looking and I can still see the truck backing up, unloading, the whole thing. And my older brothers, especially Mark, he's your age, and Dean, 2 years younger, they lived that and did some of the, crap jobs, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah, so
Sure.
it was literally, cows would walk in and the rails would have halves on it rolling into the cooler, and then, I don't know the exact timing, but a couple days later, they were cutting them into steaks or making them into bologna or hot dogs. Or
Your family was vertically integrated in the meat business. At one time, they had a ranch on Marine City Highway.
Yep. Grandpa raised the cattle. And
He raised the cattle, he butchered the cattle, and he sold the cattle.
Yeah.
Sold the meat. That's pretty incredible to be that vertically integrated.
Well, and you think back to those days, what's interesting too is if I go back and talk to somebody like yourself or somebody that was around that lives, like, we'll take an example, you just went to a graduation party at Lyle Osterland's grandson's.
Right.
Well, I can remember stopping at Lyle's house. Lyle would have been maybe a teenager as well, and my grandpa would have stopped to see Lyle's dad.
Burning.
Yeah, because they'd be buying cattle, buying pigs, whatever it was, sheep, whatever.
Right.
Or back in those days, a lot of the farmers would need somebody to take their cattle to Croswell auction or whatever stockyards that they're going to sell them at. And so it was pretty interesting, sort of like you tagged along with your dad on the truck. I'd take along with my grandpa sometimes to go up to, he'd be picking up 3 cattle on the way and then taking them to Croswell or Cass City or somewhere like that.
Got it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and still today you run into some people, I'll run into some people that maybe they remember as a kid, they remember the red pickup truck rolling in the yard and, Grandpa walking out and talking to the farmer and,
The thing
haggling.
The one thing I remember about him is he always wore khaki pants.
Yep. They were almost, I think they were like a Dickies pants.
Yeah.
The work pants.
They were work pants.
Yeah, work pants.
Every day, every time you see him, he was dressed the same.
And always had a cane with him. But back in that day, it wasn't for him to walk. It was when he was going to pick up cattle, he had the cane.
Oh, to prod him along.
Yeah. I mean, 9 out of 10 human beings would be totally afraid of a cow or a pig or whatever. No, he was handling it.
There's one other thing that your family and my family have in common, and that is that your dad and my dad were both mayor of Marine City.
Yeah. I would think back in about 68 maybe, 68 to 72, maybe both of them.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah, my dad was mayor in the early 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your dad was mayor before that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's where I was going to say maybe 66, 68, somewhere in there.
And he was your dad. The thing I remember about him being mayor, he was the youngest mayor Marine City had ever had. I think he was 29 years old.
Oh, right. Okay.
When he was mayor of Marine City.
Then if that were the case, that'd be about 1960. He was born in 30, so somewhere somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are the old black and white pictures we pull out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Thinking back to that type of stuff, so there's another thing way back in the day that comes into my mind when you talk about it, is the Mardi Gras and the go-kart races.
Oh, the go-kart races, for sure.
I mean, I wish somebody really had some really good quality videos of that. I mean, once in a while you see one show up on Facebook, but it's pretty incredible to watch.
They would come down Water Street going 2 engines in those go-karts.
Right.
They were going 100 miles an hour. I mean,
sometimes into a bale of straw.
At the corner of Broadway and Water Street.
Boom,
yeah.
by the Chevy dealer.
That's right, by John Holland Chevrolet.
Yeah.
They hit the straw there.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, one of them get hurt and have to be taken away.
Yeah.
But I forgot all about the go-kart races in Marine City. It was the Grand Prix of go-karts.
Oh,
I think is how they advertised it.
Yeah, for sure.
Funny.
So Grandpa, I mean, you'll think back to those days, there was no question of how many hours a week you were working. He worked on the farm, then he went to the store, then he went to the stockyards, and he'd come home. I mean, I'm guessing I can remember times when he'd get 2-3 hours of sleep, then go to work, and then maybe a nap in between or something like that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I know he was hard working.
Yeah.
Well, so was your dad.
Yeah.
Your dad was hard working. All your brothers worked in the meat business. They were hard working, and you were too.
Yeah.
I mean, you worked hard with the business that you had.
Yeah, I just did it in a different business. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't go into the meat business. You went into a totally different business than them.
Yep.
Which was good.
So I got into the copier business in the mid '80s and did that for 33 years, and same old thing there: hard work and persistence.
And networking.
Yeah.
Networking. That was the key.
Yeah.
At Northern, I helped some of the students up there, and that's the one thing I continually talk about with career services group up there. Networking. Who's your network? And that's how you sold.
Right.
It was your network that helped you sell your product.
Well, I look at that as, you think about it. We did it for a long time, so there's no really hesitation to sit here and think about, okay, how do you do it? But it comes naturally because you've been doing it so long. But it sort of goes along the ways of whether it's a sales scenario or a marketing scenario, just plant the seed. It may come up, it may not. It may mature, it may not. But just keep planting the seed.
Sure.
And whether it doesn't matter what you're selling. If you're selling yourself or a particular product or a service, just talk to people, see people. That's sort of the name of the game.
Right.
So, pretty much got it covered here. Unless you got anything else for me.
Nope. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on Friday.
Yeah.
Your mom. Hopefully you can come over to the house that afternoon. I hung all my mother's artwork this afternoon in the house.
Okay.
This morning, rather. I hung it all in the house.
Yep.
And so I'm looking forward to seeing your mother and the rest of your family for the event on Friday this week.
Yep. Thanks for coming in, and we'll look for you on the river.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully soon.
Okay. If anybody knows of anybody who wants to come on CTV6, the number's there, 586-707-5811. Kurt asked me about 6-8 weeks ago, what does it take to get on this show? And my answer, do you remember what my answer was?
Yeah, you need to be breathing.
I said you have to have a pulse.
Oh, pulse.
So anyway, that's it. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.
How'd that go? All right?
Yeah.